All right, hello, everybody. Welcome to the July joint Central 9th and Ballpark Community Council meeting. Still letting a few people in. Thanks especially for joining us on relatively short notice and sending out the details. We wanted to be flexible and responsive to the community in this moment. We know we've experienced some rough events together recently, so we appreciate you joining us on relatively short notice. All right, we're enabling some local settings for people so they can turn on their cameras, chat, etc. Doug, I see that you're busy doing that, but would you like to introduce yourself? Take a pause briefly for a second there.
Hi, I'm Doug Flagler. I am on the Ballpark Community Council as well as the Central 9th Community Council. I live just north of Jefferson Park.
Thanks, Doug. Sarah Reel, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Reel. I'm on the Ballpark Community Council, and I live just south of 17th South off of West Temple. Thanks to Amy for organizing consistently. Appreciate it.
Sure, happy to. Excellent. Let's see, scrolling around, looking for some more board members here. I see a lot of great familiar names here tonight. I'm really happy to see everybody here. Let's see. Apologize. I think a lot of us are trying to manage some direct requests that we're getting here tonight. Let's see, who else do I see online from the Ballpark board? Jeff Sandstrom. Hello, would you like to say hello, Jeff? I just asked for you to unmute.
Hi, this is Jeff. I'm one of the board members on the Community Council, and I live at 1496 South Main Street.
A beautiful house that you refurbished with great loving care, I might add, but you're really on the front lines there, Jeff, I think. Let's see. Dan Thomas, would you like to introduce yourself today?
If I have to. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Thomas, also a Ballpark board member. I am located on Major Street, so I have a front row seat to the historic drug dealing district. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Dan. Not sure if Lloyd can join us tonight. Not sure if Kevin has joined us yet. Doug, do you see other folks on from Central 9th that I ought to give a shout out to?
I'm looking right now. Not seeing anyone at the moment, but does not mean that they're not there.
Rachel, actually. Rachel, I believe you're on from Central 9th. I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel. Good to be here.
I believe you're a board member from Central 9th, Rachel. Is that the case?
Yeah, I'm a board member from Central 9th, lived in Central 9th for many years.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Okay, I know we have also, plenty of city staff, elected officials, and certainly some law enforcement who've chosen to spend their time with us this evening. Thank you so much for doing that. First of all, Chief Mike Brown, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thank you so much frankly, for taking my call on Sunday afternoon and my text when I reached out to you immediately and said, Chief Brown, I really think this would be an appropriate time for you to speak directly to the community. I think that was great that you that you responded. That was kind.
Thanks, Amy.
And I believe that we're also joined tonight by Captain Jason Peterson from the Utah Transit Authority Police. Part of the reason I reached out to Captain Peterson tonight is because we all understand that the recent homicide from July 2nd that happened at the 900 South Track Station would be actually under the UTA's jurisdiction. So we thought it would be appropriate to get UTA police on tonight. Thank you, Captain Peterson.
I'm Jason. Nice to meet y'all, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you. And I understand it's a active ongoing investigation, but I appreciate that you're on tonight, and we'll answer the kinds of questions that you can, to the extent that you can. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Let's see. I know we've got some other folks on here tonight that are important. Detective Fallows, would you, our community liaison officer, would you please introduce yourself? You're still relatively new to our community, so I'd love folks to understand who you are and the role that you play for us.
Absolutely. My voice is kind of coming back, so that's good. But if my voice breaks, I apologize. I'm Detective Fallows. I've been doing the community liaison spot for about 6 months now. Detective Meinzer did an excellent job of helping me understand what we need to do in this position. And essentially, I'm here to help you all with any of your community concerns, things that may be happening in your neighborhoods. I help Amy and the Ballpark community with pulling the monthly stats and going over those and keeping an eye on those kinds of things as well. I also help facilitate resources to problems within the ballpark. And of course, I also cover District 6 and 7. So Ballpark is within District 5. I cover 5, 6, and 7. Ballpark is, I spend a lot of, give a lot of my attention to Ballpark, and I'm pretty responsive. So if you need anything, I'm going to put some information in the chat for everybody when we're ready to get going. But if you need anything, you can always reach out. I'm pretty responsive, and we'll find a way to get some help for you.
Thank you so much. And I see Representative Briscoe is on tonight. Representative Briscoe, I'm not sure if I know that you were coming from another event. I'm not sure if you're in a place where you can give an introduction. But we can always check in with you at a later time. Our City Council member, Darren Mono, is also on the call. Not sure if you can check in with us, Council Member Mono. But again, we can also, sorry, I'm asking people to unmute with like very little notice. So
Darren says he's in another appointment, and so
I appreciate that. Sorry, I can also ask people to check in with us at a later date, and we can proceed. So the format of this meeting tonight is pretty basic. We were just hoping for a Q&A with the community and a check-in and explanation of events of where. Oh, excuse me, Joel Briscoe. I see that you're now. I get a visual. Would you like to check in with us?
Now that you've allowed me to unmute.
Well,
Joel Briscoe, Utah House of Representatives. Good to see you all.
excellent. And the mayor's office is with us, courtesy Tim Cosgrove, who's recently been promoted. I believe you're now the overlord of community outreach with the mayor's office.
Hi, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm trying to get this video. There we go. Nice to be with you this evening. Yeah, and Josh Roboyo is also online. He'll be the new District 5 liaison, but he can also share a lot of the things that we've been working on, investing in with the ballpark community.
Hi, everyone.
Josh, I'd love for you to give an introduction. We've relied so much on Tim for the past, I don't know how many years now. 6, 8, 10. How many years, Tim?
6 years.
All right.
Yeah.
I rely on Tim all the time, so I agree, appreciate that. My name's Josh Arroyo. I'm a community liaison in mayor's office. I've been with the mayor's office for about 3 years. Up until now, I've been the liaison for districts 1 and 2 for the west side. And I'm continuing to be the liaison for District 1, and now coming into District 5 as Tim takes a more citywide role in the mayor's office. So I'm happy to be with all of you, and I will, Amy has my contact info. I'm happy to provide it in the chat as well.
Yeah, it'd be great. Let's dump everybody's contact info in the chat. I think everybody who has worked with our mayor liaisons has found that they are very helpful in connecting us to resources, whether that be city enforcement, whether that be the right detective. Very helpful. All right. Chief Brown, is there any way that you could give us a brief update on events as they stand now? I know we've all been updated through the media on some of the most recent events in our neighborhood, like the shooting that happened on Sunday morning. But there've been, some new findings since then. Can you provide an update on where we are? But you'll have to unmute to do it. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Anyway, thank you, Amy. Thanks for the invite to be here tonight. It's nice to spend some time with you. And I did appreciate the call on Sunday, and absolutely, I'm more than happy to be here tonight and talk through some of the issues and concerns. As it relates to that case, we know early morning on Sunday, shots rang out, and it wasn't just 1 or 2, it was several shots. There were basically 3 different crime scenes that kind of spanned the area of 1485 South Main and northward. Cars fled the area. We immediately responded. Officers were there within minutes of that occurring, securing the scene, providing medical aid, first aid to the victim. We secured it, started our investigation, and through the hard work of our robbery detectives and other assets of the police department, we took 2 into custody on Monday morning, early Monday morning. The victim was listed at the hospital and then left against the advice of medical, but that's where we're at with this investigation. There's still a lot to do, a lot of follow-up, but that's where it sits right now.
Would you be interested in also describing the events of the woman who was attacked at 800 South in Maine on July 4th?
Hang on, Sam, do you have those details? Detective Follows? Is that going to be part of your overview?
Whoop.
There we go. The woman that was attacked on 8 South in Maine on July 4th.
Yes, sir.
I don't have the details on that, but I can look at it real quick and we can go over it.
And we can always take a pause and talk briefly about the 900 South events and go back to that if that would make sense. Just so we're all sort of on the same page.
Yeah, I also have, I don't know if you want me to go over that. I have the monthly stats as well. We can kind of talk about if you're, if you want to go over that as well. So whatever you want to do is fine.
I don't think there's anything too shocking either way in the monthly stats, unless you know otherwise, Detective Fallows. So I was hoping just to sort of talk about the big events that people have seen lately in the media, just because those are the sort of things that folks have reached out to me and other community members about. But if you have specific things that you think that you should be communicating to community members about, like, a sudden spike in car prowls or something like that, step in and interrupt. Captain Peterson, can you talk about the 900 South homicide, which I should specify, my understanding is that it's not being classified at this time as a criminal homicide, even though it's still a shocking event to happen in the community.
Yeah, I can't give out too much level of detail because it is an active investigation. The detectives probably have another few days of working on it. It should be wrapped up next week, but this appears to be a case of self-defense. So the two gentlemen that were shot were attacking the individual who was a carry concealed permit holder. And so he was the one that called 911 after the shooting, and he's been cooperating with our detectives. So that's kind of where we're at on that one.
And I understand that Brent Weisberg, you can also provide some information about the 800 South Main incident.
Yeah, so this incident, we are still investigating. We have our detectives with our robbery squad and violent crime squad working this investigation. As you've likely seen this in the media, we are still in the very early stages of it, but the preliminary information that we have on this is that there was a woman who was walking down in the area of 800 South Main Street in the overnight hours when an unknown individual approached her. She has made statements to the media that this person, who is a stranger to her, approached her, made some comments to her, and then tried to drag her into a vehicle wherein she was also assaulted. She has said to the media that this individual used the butt of a gun to hit her in her face, and that during the attack, a single round was fired from the alleged assailant. At this point, we're still in the very early stages of it. As you've obviously seen, there is surveillance video on it. I spoke with our detective division as recently as today to get an update on the case, and they still are in the process of collecting surveillance video, trying to use all available resources to identify the vehicle involved with it. So they're in the early stages of it. We were also working with the victim to provide advocacy, support, and outreach to that person as well. One of the things that was kind of unique about this case was it was reported to us, but there were not a lot of details initially provided to the initial officers who responded. We only found out about the video after media contacted us. So it just is another reminder for community members that if there is information that can be provided to our patrol officers or detectives in a timely fashion, that's critical, because they were, a couple of hours behind the 8 ball on this case when they didn't even know that this surveillance video had existed. So they're still in the process of going back and finding all additional surveillance video to this case.
Thank you, Brent. That was very thorough. I appreciate that. So one of the things that strikes me about these incidents is how different they are. The shooting that happened, that my own driveway security camera captured, that woke me up, that I thought was fireworks. That was an exchange of 30 to 40 bullets and seemed to be the result of a large late night, early morning party. A woman getting attacked on 800 South in Maine by an unknown assailant, and a man acting in self-defense at a track station. Those crimes are of a very different nature. And so when we think about the resources that would be necessary to address and prevent them, those two would be quite different. And I wondered if law enforcement on this call could speak about that, and if they feel that they have sufficient resources, and if to allocate to this neighborhood, because I think that I and other community members on this call feel that crime does affect our neighborhoods disproportionately compared to other neighborhoods in the city. And it isn't just one kind of crime. It's several different kinds of violent crime. Could you talk about that a bit? But you'll have to unmute to do it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was trying to unmute, but it says you have to let me.
We're
So
going to
thank-
make you a co-host so you can unmute whenever you want.
All right, thank you, Amy.
Okay.
I appreciate your concern. And like I said on Sunday, and I've said several times since, I want you to know that we hear your concerns. We really do. And they don't fall on deaf ears. We've been working extremely hard over the last several years in our CompStat model. We've deployed officers to different locations. The Liberty Bike Squad that works a lot. And when I say a lot in the ballpark community is doing fantastic work, very proactive, aggressive work going after those that are causing not only violent crime in your community, but quality of life issues as well. And I appreciate the work they're doing. But there's more we can do, and there's more that we want to do. We are embarking and have for the last 6 weeks in a hot block policing strategy. And really, to explain that in layman's terms, it's taking officers and resources and putting them where crime is happening to prevent and deter it from happening. And so we have contracted recently with the University of San Antonio, Texas San Antonio, to send their team up to look at our data, to analyze it, and to help us understand where and when we can deploy resources. And when I talk about resources, it's not just going after violent crime. It's the very differences that you're talking about, Amy, in the crime throughout the community. It's the bike squads, it's the gang unit, it's patrol, it's special investigations, it's the co-responder model, it's our social workers, so that we can holistically address crime in the ballpark as well as across the city. Now, this isn't going to happen overnight. We understand that. And our very best partner in this is going to be the communities that we work with. And it's going to be the ballpark community. It's going to be you on this call right today. We need your help, and we need your support, and we need to just let us know how we can better help you. As we move forward with this, it's not as easy as I talk about. And I brought with me tonight Deputy Chief Scott Morkos. He oversees our Intel analyst team, our CompStat team, and he actually has studied quite a bit on this topic. So Deputy Chief Morkos, if you could, there you are, if you could maybe take a few minutes and talk about what we're doing. But in essence, we're trying everything we can. This is an all hands on deck approach to keep the ballpark a vibrant and thriving community. Scott?
We'll have to find him to unmute him. Sorry, I know our muting might seem aggressive, but there were other community councils that were Zoom bombed, and that wasn't a pleasant experience for anybody. Didn't really set the professional tone that we're seeking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
No problem. I appreciate you allowing me to be here. So just to kind of address some of the things that Chief Brown mentioned there. I am over our crime analysis unit. And one of the things that I've really tried hard to implement here are going out and looking at the best evidence-based strategies that we have for crime reduction. And we've undertaken 3 specific actions currently regarding that. The first one, as the chief mentioned, I have my analysts go back for the past year on crime stats and identify the 3 blocks within each of our patrol divisions that accounted for the most amount of violent crime over the past year. 2 of those blocks in the Liberty Division, which is the patrol division Ballpark is in. It was Jefferson and 1400 South, and the block where Gail Miller Resources, 242 West Paramount. So for the past 6 weeks, we have been directing our patrol officers, our bike officers, special investigations units directly to those areas. And as it stands up right now, for the past 6 weeks, at Jefferson and 1400 South, there's been 128 hours dedicated specifically to that block. And that's not call response, that's proactive. We're not on a call right now. We're going to go out and be in this area and be a deterrent and make a difference in that area as best they can. The officers have been making almost 100 consensual contacts, 13 felony arrests. At 242 Paramount, they've spent about 91 hours there with 138 consensual contacts and 9 felony arrests. So our officers are really, they're doing the best they can when it comes to any free time they have, going to those specific areas, 2 of which are in the Ballpark community, to try to address some of the issues that you guys are having. Moving forward, there's 2 specific programs that we're implementing here. The first being working with Doctors Rachel and Roberto Santos out of Radford University. They are the progenitors of a crime reduction strategy model called stratified policing. And in a nutshell, it's essentially a proactive crime reduction management system that really just provides a systematic way of narrowing in on the small areas where we see an overconcentration of crime and focusing the organization on those areas in a systematic and coordinated manner, whether it be hotspots like we've been doing for the past 6 weeks with the blocks that we've identified. That's a place-based approach. A person-focused approach looks at identifying prolific offenders and trying to address those individual prolific offenders that account for a disproportionate amount of crime. Problem-solving approaches, which is a lot of what Detective Fallows does, along with a community-based approach. The second part that we're implementing over the next couple months is working, as the chief mentioned, with some criminologists at University of Texas, San Antonio, specifically for violent crime reduction activities. We have a pretty robust crime analysis unit as is, which is why we've been able to look at identify the areas that we have identified already, but I'm a big believer in also using experts to help us do better. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to come in and let us analyze our crime data in a more robust manner, really narrow down on these micro concentrated spots of violent crime. We will be putting much more visible presence in those areas. And then they reanalyze our data every 3 months, and we move if the crime patterns move and evaluate how we're doing. Because if we're not seeing the outcomes that we want, then obviously we need to change up our plan. And that's an important part of this. So again, we are putting a lot of resources and effort into these evidence-based strategies that the literature is pretty clear on. This is the best way that we can approach proactively reducing crime. It's a process. It's not a fix overnight. And I think it's also important to remember that we're just one component of the criminal justice system. We don't control jails. We don't control district attorney's offices. We don't control sentencing. Those are all factors that also play into problems that any community has when it comes to crime problems. But we are doing the best we can and using the best evidence-based strategies that we have to make a positive effect in these areas.
Great, thank you. Somebody must have let you know that I'm a big fan of using data-driven strategies. That's probably a tell on my part. I appreciate that. And I have heard that you are using Comstat data in a different way, and that's exciting to hear. Could you tell me how long you've been implementing that different strategy?
Like I said, we just started it about 6 weeks ago. So it's been about 6 weeks. We are implementing more of the stratified model coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We have the criminologists from the University of Texas, San Antonio coming to visit and kind of finalize plans the first week of August. So I would expect that part of our evidence-based strategy to be up and rolling beginning of September-ish.
And Ballpark, just to follow up on a couple of the things that made this possible is we recently hired a data scientist. She came here from Minneapolis. And she's amazing. She can take the data that we have and show us different elements of crime, when, where, why it's happening. And that's hopefully what we can do further with the University of Texas San Antonio. So when we say hotspots, it's not just, it's very micro locations. And it's not just, I want you to be in this area or drive through it occasionally. It's like, on this day, at this time, we need you in this area with your lights on, driving around the block. It's very proactive, it's very visual, it's very optics, hopefully to really have an effect on the crime and prevent. And if not, we'll make those arrests. Another thing we've been doing is through the Project Safe Neighborhood program, our partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, those most violent individuals that are causing these crimes, like these shootings in our communities, we are prosecuting them on the federal level, which allows us or the prosecutors to seek longer and stiffer penalties so that we can take these prolific violent criminals out of our community for a longer time. And then it really is no secret, through 2020 and 2021, our staffing has waned. We're down today 39 officers, but we just graduated 21 new recruits today. We have another academy class going right now. They'll graduate in October, and then we'll start another academy class in September of hopefully 30. We have another cadre of lateral officers and some rehire officers that hopefully will start in August. So at every chance we get, we're hiring and we're bringing on more officers to help in these efforts.
All right, I have one more question and then I'll pass it to the chat because I can see that lots of folks had plenty of questions, and maybe folks can utilize the hand raising feature so we can unmute you, or I can unmute folks in the order that people had questions in the chat. But again, this is sort of the whole purpose of this meeting, is to give people a chance to interact directly with our law enforcement officers and elected officials about these questions. But, you know, I appreciate, you know, while violence is concentrated in very particular places, for example, I see Jason named Wayne's Corner in the chat. It's not the places themselves that are committing homicides, for example. And Chief, you did mention that our force is short-staffed and has been for a couple of years now. I know our vice squad was disbanded or collapsed into our narcotics squad, and I'm under the impression that some of our other specialized units, like our gangs unit, has been really collapsed into. I feel like stopping violent crime in our communities often means addressing the risks and the needs of those most likely to be involved in it, those networks of individuals. Are there plans to step back up those specialized units within the Salt Lake Police Department?
Absolutely. With our staffing shortages, I mean, we're now down 39 officers, but bear in mind that includes the 10 additional officers that we received on grant funding for our violent crime apprehension team. So we hope to have that staffed and up and going here this fall sometime. But yeah, across the board, Ballpark, we've had to take officers out of different specialized squads and put them back to patrol. When people call 911, and there's an emergency and they need our help, we have to be able to answer those calls. So it's a balancing act, and we're trying to do the best we can with the staffing levels that we have right now. We're getting there and we'll be there, but it's going to take a little bit of time. Hiring officers is not quick. We hire them, we put them through a basic academy, and then through a field training officer program, which takes about 10 months. So you hire them today, you won't see them on the street for 10 months. But we have over the last year had classes start, and then we're now starting to see them graduate out of the academies, go into FTO, and then ultimately onto the street to help with these things. And as our patrol, if we've got to be able to answer those calls for service. If we can't, we're not doing the service that we need for our community. But as our numbers come up, we will repopulate some of those squads and reassign people back to those specialized squads as well.
Great, and I know that that might have an effect on some of the late night parties where we've seen some of those really serious crimes crop up again and again, including the murder of one of our University of Utah football players. Let's see. Sorry, I'm scrolling back. Lots of folks in the chat here. Danielle. Danielle, can I find you here? Would you raise your hand if you're still on the call, please? And we have a couple Danielles. Let's make that confusing.
I asked her to unmute.
Oh,
Hey guys, how's it going?
hey there.
Hey, I was just curious, my question to the chat, so I don't know if this is geared towards officers or whoever has the data. I'm just curious where our crime is coming from and who it's coming from. Is it random, is it the unsheltered community? Like, where is it coming from? Who are the people committing all the crime? If you guys have any comments on that.
Deputy Chief Marcos, do you have any specific details on that? You're muted.
There we go. Thank you. That's a good question. I can't speak specifically to the numbers for unsheltered people versus not unsheltered people. I can say that when we looked at the data over the past year and a half, about a third of the crimes that were committed within the ballpark community were from people that are not residents of Salt Lake City. So we're getting an influx of non-residents into that area that are committing, best we can tell with the data that we have, about a third of the crimes over the last year and a half. So, I mean, that's certainly part of, I think that's an outcome of being Salt Lake City, right? Salt Lake City is the central hub of Salt Lake County. So you get a lot of people coming into the city to recreate or engage in activity that we wish that they wouldn't. But that certainly is a component of what we're seeing in that area.
Danielle, do you feel that answered your question?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, that's super helpful. I'm just curious from, as a resident, what can we do? And sorry if I'm gearing this conversation elsewhere. I guess I don't understand what my rights are. I've called the cops a zillion times. Like, by the way, you guys are heroes. Like, I would not want your job ever in a million years. But, with like people that are just going crazy, drug dealing on the streets. Like, I have 2 properties in the area and there's 20 people living under the bridge on 200 West. But, if we call in, like, what should we expect to happen, or what rights do the unsheltered people have that I don't have? Or like, how do we know what we can do, I guess, in that regard? Not to like hate on them. I'm realizing I'm making a lot of assumptions on that's where a lot of our crime is coming from, or I'm assuming, but thanks for your help.
Well, Danielle, everybody has equal rights. But if you have an issue or concern or you're witnessing a crime, please call us. I mean, you may feel like that you've called 100 times and nothing's happened, but every time you call, it puts a dot on the map, and Scott and his team will look at those dots. That drives the data analysis, the data-driven strategies that we have. So please call. Another really good resource is to get a hold of Detective Follows. I don't know, he's new. He took over for Nate, who I know you loved very much, but Sam is a good officer and he's going to do a fantastic job for you. If you haven't met him, he's just a little shy guy. No, he's a mountain of a man with a heart of gold, and he'll do everything he can to help you in this community. But rather than, I mean, if you call, let's sit down and talk about it, because if there's a problem that we can solve without calling over and over and over, because a lot of times they sit in a queue and the next patrol officer who gets the call may not know of all the times you've called or have the expertise or the background on the call. But if you call Detective Follows, he'll have that. He'll sit down and we can put a strategy together. So, but still call. I want you to call. But I do want you to be able to get a hold of Sam and work with him. We also have a new position within the police department, the BCEO, which is the Business Community Engagement Officer, and his name is Detective Slc. We call him Glue because Slc is really hard to say. And he works close with Detective Follows as well to work with businesses. And again, very specific to the needs that they have, to work with security teams, to do SEPTED reviews, but really to bring kind of a quarterback of resources to help you to address the problem, fix the problem, and not just keep coming back and responding to it time and time again with, little or no results. So I hope that helps.
And I would just add to what Chief Brown said as well. I am a great resource because I can help direct resources to where they need to go. But another really good resource for our residents is the SLC Mobile App, which is something I wanted to bring up while we have so many people on right now. A lot of you probably already know about it, but the SLC Mobile App is extremely helpful to not just the police department, but to the actual city partners that help do the cleanups, bring resources to our unsheltered residents. And so if you are experiencing a lot of people who are unsheltered staying on your property or who are in the area, you can snap a picture, you can upload it through the SLC mobile app, and it goes directly to our city partners who then send out resources, and those resources can get them, they can get them on the housing lists. They can help them with any of their needs they might have. They even have grants for like fixing some people's vehicles to help get them out of the area. That's been an issue that's been helpful. And they've actually been able to come out and like literally fix someone's RV or vehicle and get them on their way so that they're not staying in the same area in Ballpark or wherever else throughout the city. So there's a lot of resources that the city can offer, but we need to know about it. That's the main thing. And I think that's what Chief Brown is driving home. Call us, number one, and let us know. And number two, report it on the SLC mobile app, because we have a meeting every Thursday where we do nothing but go over for an hour on all the different locations we're going to go visit, all the different resources we're going to send out to these locations. And currently there's I think 3 different locations just in the Ballpark neighborhood right there on Major Street, Main and State, in that area, where our teams are going to go out and get resources to those individuals. So for everybody on, please download the SLC mobile app. It is very, very helpful. And it's not just to report homelessness concerns. There's speeding on there. There's gang issues on there. There's graffiti. If your business has been graffitied, or if there's a public space that's been graffitied that needs to be cleaned up, they are extremely responsive. And if you report it, they will come out and they will take care of it. So I apologize, I'm losing my voice. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. But the SLC mobile app is like probably one of the best features I've been able to work with in this position, because it helps just drive the resources where we need to send them. And that comes from you guys directly. We don't know if we're not told. So just to add to what Chief Brown was saying.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what Detective Follows was talking about, we work with our city and county partners when it comes to homeless camps and that pop up within the city. Our role as a police department is to ensure the safety of the service providers, the city workers, the county workers, the social workers that go in to help. But it really does matter if you let us know, because they do take the number of calls and go out and look at these different areas. Just to talk about some of the abatements that have occurred within the Liberty or the Ballpark community. I know that the camp that at 200 West and 13 South, it's known as the Lowe's camp. We've abated that 4 times. The 1300 South and 400 West, that was recently abated. The 1350 South Major Street, 1800 South State Street, 3 times in the last few months, and then Liberty Park 4 times. So really your input and your partnership in all we do, from violent crime to quality of life issues, matters. So please let us know.
Dan, I feel like you've had about 7 questions in the chat. I feel like we ought to give you the opportunity to either add on to Danielle's comment or start a new thread.
Yeah, and I probably won't be able to get them all out, but we'll try to be concise here. So Danielle's experience is not unique. And I think it echoes and reflects what a lot of neighbors have felt and seen in Ballpark over the years. I've been here 9+ years, and front row to seeing that the violent crime is coming often from the exact same groups of constant open drug activity. The parties that are going through the nights, multiple days on a row, often connected to the drug activity. Now, Chief, you alluded to when we get more officers back that this could help address the drug problem. And if you would specifically address that, that would be nice to hear. But right now, when people like Danielle, myself, and other neighbors are calling and reporting this, our best case scenario is a response where officers show up and shoo people along. Now, going from my street to 2 streets over doesn't solve any problems, and it turns into a repeat day after day problem for your officers to have to respond to the same person. And these people, they're not all homeless. They congregate in the daytime. I'd say about half of them come from their homes, different neighborhoods, to this area because they know that they're not going to get, well, they're least likely to get in trouble for their open and continuous drug activity in Ballpark. So we've cultivated a culture of drugs. You didn't do it. It's been here a long time, but it continues. We all know about it. Can we openly talk about it and know that this is going to stop eventually?
I'm not used to Zoom calls. Got out of the habit of muting and unmuting. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your comments, and I hear your concerns, and I want to let you know that we're working with a lot of different resources to affect the change that you're looking for. Like I say, it's not gonna it's not gonna happen overnight. But the Liberty Bike Squad, Sergeant Christensen and his team, they're working very hard on a lot of these drug problems, the stolen car problems, and a lot of the quality of life issues that you're experiencing. So I hope with this stratified policing model and this strategy of hot block policing that we can, through your help and your calls, put those cops in that area where we can prevent and deter that type of crime. So like I say, it's not going to happen overnight, but we need your help, and we'll continue to put whatever resources we can to keep the Ballpark community safe.
Can you specifically comment about how our police resistant continuous drug users that are never out of our neighborhood, they are not discouraged by the police presence. They're never gone for long. And it seems that they're just getting shooed from street to street, never solving the problem, just moving it around to a neighbor that doesn't feel as comfortable calling police.
Yeah. Dan, I'd have to say, we're talking in generalities, but I'd have to get very specific. But I do know that our officers make arrests. They make arrests. I mean, we're the tip of the spear. We're very, as part of the criminal justice system, we do arrest people. In fact, we arrest more people in this county than any other agency by far. We take them to jail. Now, we don't run the jail. We don't control the jail. We don't know why there might be OR'd out or why they're not held over by pretrial. But we need to work closer and communicate better with our criminal justice partners about this issue as well. I mean, COVID has had a huge
drug
impact.
arrests or all arrests? Because it seems like drugs go unchecked, if we're just going to be straight here.
No, we make a lot of drug arrests as well. But I'd have to maybe have an offline conversation with you if you know specific individuals that you could point out to Detective Follows or not. We can check up and follow on
I
that.
could look out the window and point out a couple of them to you right now. Yeah, they are extremely persistent. They never leave. They're always sitting there smoking meth or whatnot, and there doesn't seem to be a way to get it to stop.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, Dan, and I'm committed to continue with our endeavors to clean this area up for you. So please don't give up, because we won't either.
Thanks.
I understand that didn't seem like a very satisfying answer, Dan, and I know you've dealt with some pretty serious problems for years on end. I think there's some other comments in the chat that specifically are about sex work, and that's something that I don't actually frequently hear many comments about. Are there resources specifically for sex workers that we can, or is there anything that we can we direct people towards help in that regard? I know, that's a uniquely vulnerable population. Those are people who that is a tough spot to get out of. I hear a lot about trauma-informed policing. What kind of resources do we have to help people in that space?
Amy, that's a great question. And I was talking with the sergeant over our organized crime unit today, and specifically when they go out on certain calls like that, they do take victim advocates with them. They take our social workers with them, or if they find somebody that's in need of those type of resources, they make those calls and try to hook people up with the resources and help they need. We take a very trauma-informed, victim-centered approach to those that are caught up into that as a victim.
Actually, I think there's somebody else on the call who might have, let's see, Jen Plum is on the call. She might have fairly unique knowledge about resources for that vulnerable population. But I'm not sure if she's in a place where she's able to speak up at the moment. So,
hi, Amy. Did it unmute me?
It did unmute you. Hello, Dr. Plum. How are you this evening?
I'm well. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been listening in, and thank you all for the insight. I do think in our population of folks that we work with, at least, who are engaging in sex work as well as who are trafficked at times, there are a couple of good community resources. There's a group called Soap to Hope, which actually does a lot of victim advocacy and helps people escape from kind of being in that trafficked space. I think that trauma-informed kind of view of it is important for all of us, and the global picture of it's very rarely just that's their work, right? There's a lot of other pieces. So I do think that's a space where we potentially could make some inroads for folks, but it will take some of those broader pieces of social work availability and building all of the pieces around them. So thanks for caring about them.
Great. And I should add, Dr. Plum may soon, it seems, be joining us as our state senator, although nothing has been finalized yet. So we look forward to seeing what will happen. Nothing, don't want to be too premature here, but seems likely, since we're naming all the elected officials on this call. We may find out next week. When do we get to find out, Dr. Plum, if you were Senator Plum or not? I have to unmute you to.
There we go. Yeah.
Sorry
So the final count from the clerk's office will be certified on July 12th, and it's a close race. And so every single one of those data points is a constituent's voice. So I will definitely be awaiting that, but would be really honored to be able to work with y'all in that capacity. So
Great.
To be continued.
I hope everybody on this call voted, no matter what. Wendy Wade, do you have I know that you've made a bunch of comments and have some, I think you might even have a specific question about a sexual assault on your property. Do you have a specific question? I'm asking you if you want to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I appreciate all the people that are here at the meeting. I have spent basically my entire life on the corner of 13th South between State and Main Street. I've seen it all, and I've never seen it this bad. Okay, and I've spent 50 years of my life. You know, I'm frustrated with the prostitution. I'm frustrated that the city won't vacate the alleys. I'm frustrated that the motels, I know those guys are making over $600,000 a year managing those motels. And come on, guys, we know it's from prostitution. So, I mean, when is the city council and the mayor and, you know, I mean, come to the table, guys. Like, it's like cockroaches and they're just going to scatter. Right? I've got a rape on my property in May behind one of my buildings. I've got needles and meth and drugs going on nightly in the alley that runs between State and Major Street. I mean, I've had graffiti twice in the last week. And I'm not a slumlord. Like, I have nice buildings. I've got great tenants. Like, I actually care, but I feel like the city doesn't care about me. That's how I really feel. I support 12 small businesses, and they all are local businesses. They're families, their husbands and wives. They're supporting their kids. And I just don't feel like the city cares about me. I gotta be honest. When those alleys continue to just sit there the way they are, they flood, they're full of drugs and crime and prostitution. And I mean, it's endless. It might as well be Chicago, is how I feel. And I guess I've just seen 50 years of it. And maybe I just want to voice my frustrations because my tenants all call. They call the police. They call and they call and they call. And you know, Wayne's Corner continues to thrive. The motels continue to thrive. The graffiti continues to happen. So what do I do as a business owner trying to like increase my values of my property, trying to help my tenants feel like they're safe? It's that they want to rent from me, that they want to like be in this part of town. Who's going to support me as a property owner?
Wendy, this is Chief Brown. Hey, I do appreciate your comments. Have you had a chance to talk with Detective Meinzer or now Detective Sam Follows?
I have talked to Nate Meiser numerous times. Yes, I
Okay.
have. He knows who I am. He knows my properties. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can follow up, or Detective Follows can follow up with you after this meeting, or even stop by your business to see what we can do.
Okay. That'd be great.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Agreed though with you, Wendy. The problem does seem structural. I don't know many people who believe in what that particular alley is. That one's a tough one. I don't know what can be done with it. And that might be a conversation to reopen with the nearby property owners if they want to initiate alley vacancy application. There could be a pretty compelling public safety argument in. It's not an easy or fun process, but it might be worth trying.
I will get with some of the other, I mean, Mark Lockhart and I are frequently talking, so, you know, we continue to try. We've had meetings with the mayor's office. We've had plenty of people there look at it, and they just say no. There's utility lines. It just is what it is. So I guess.
Hey, Wendy, I hear your concerns, and I'll tell you what, let me take some of your concerns to the meetings that I attend with some of the policy directors in the city and see if we can't come up with a holistic approach to help you with some of these things. Because it sounds like some of these are, based in crime, but some of them aren't. but maybe there's a holistic approach that we can work with together with you on as a city.
Okay, that would be great. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Danielle, do you have any more specific questions? I know you've gotten some, you've had a couple specific questions in the chat. Let me find other Danielle.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for allowing me to join in. I do have one specific question. Throughout my process of campaigning, one of the things that I've noticed is that certain areas receive different responses from the police and different levels of engagement than others. I have noticed that the further up you are on the hill, the less likely you are to not have a follow-up phone call or to not be able to place a police report. I was wondering whether or what the plan is to address that level of perceived inequity or inequality. That's at least what I have observed.
Danielle, I guess, can you explain your concern or your question a little more? I mean, just on face value, every call that we get, we respond to. We treat everyone equally. It doesn't matter where you live. We respond and try to address the problem across the board.
Sure, I would be happy to give you a more concrete example. So when I have spoken with individuals in Ballpark, they have filled out police reports, or they have made a report, called the police. Something's been done, but then there is no follow-up. There is no additional calls from the police that do arrive on scene, or from the prosecutor's office, or really from anyone notifying them about, the status of the case, what's happening in the case, notifying them about what their rights are. I know that one of the commentators, or one of the women who commented earlier, mentioned that she doesn't even know what her rights are. And victims do have rights. They have the right, obviously, to be notified of when the offender is going to have a hearing, right? When they can be present, when they can come and give a statement. And I have noticed that up on the hill, I have a gentleman who lives up there. His car was broken into, and the police responded. They followed up with him. He was able to fill out a police report within an hour, and they continued to inform him about the status of the case as it progressed. Whereas I haven't been seeing that or hearing about that from anyone else in the Ballpark area. And I was wondering what your plan is to address that level of inequality that I've been perceiving and seeing, and I don't know if anyone else has, because obviously the Ballpark community is in Ballpark, but I have been seeing that somewhere else within your jurisdiction.
Sorry, Chief Brown, I think you need to unmute.
Oh, wow. I was on a roll there too. Sorry. Danielle, thank you for clarifying some of that. You're right. Victims do and should be informed of all those things that you just mentioned. Sometimes that is at the DA's office through Sim Gill and his victim advocates. I want you to know that the Salt Lake City Police Department has our own victim advocates that are called out. They work 9 to 5, they work afternoons, but they're called out to help address and give resources and advise in a very victim-centered, trauma-informed manner. And they do a fantastic job. They work under the direction of Wendy Isom, who's been doing this job for about 28 years. So we are committed to provide that type of service for the victims of crime and the things that you're talking about. We're looking into new technologies here at the police department that help leverage automation and to be able to make telephone calls, send texts, and let people know exactly where we're at on the follow-up of their investigation. So we're trying, and we've heard some of these same concerns, but there's more to do. And if you'd like, we can have a follow-up conversation offline because I'd like to know if you have specific cases that we can help victims out on.
Amy, are we able to pivot a little bit to the 900 South tracks shooting? Are you good with that?
I'm super good with that, Doug. Take the lead.
Okay. I think we have somebody from UTA Police on, Captain Peterson. Are you with us?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. I just had some questions, or do you want to talk a little bit about the incident? I know that it's an active investigation, and there's, you are limited on what you can say, but.
Yeah, I kind of spoke to that early on in the meeting, but
Yeah.
about all we can release is, yeah, it is an active investigation. My investigations unit should have it wrapped up pretty quick here. It hasn't been filed with the DA yet, but it appears to be a case of self-defense. So,
Are you looking at staffing any more officers on the station? It is kind of a known hotspot for some criminal activity in the Central 9th neighborhood, and so.
yeah, so similar to kind of Salt Lake City, what they do, we use intelligence-led policing. So we use our statistics, we look at stats daily, weekly. We kind of target our officer concentration to our problem areas. And Ballpark is one of our stations. It's a little higher with crime. Obviously, our green line going out to the airport and the downtown area is a little more action-packed in terms. But Ballpark is on our priority list. So our officers do patrol that pretty heavily, but they're also on the trains, riding the trains. So obviously our focus is our parking lots, our platforms, our trains, our buses, bus stops. We're almost fully staffed. So we went through a couple of years of being short staffed, but we're getting almost fully staffed. But that leads us to 81 officers, and we're also covering 7 different counties. So we're kind of spread out, kind of like highway patrol. But our highest deployment and concentration of police officers is Salt Lake and South Salt Lake area.
And so that includes bus routes too. When
correct. Yep. Bus
okay.
routes through all 5 counties or 7 counties.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest question was just if there was extra staffing in the area. I personally have had an incident on a UTA train within the last month of, an aggressive person hollering at us. And so, and it's kind of one of those situations where it's hard to, you call you call 911, but at the end of the day, the person moves on fairly quickly because they go with the train or the transportation. So
our officers, I will say, they're very skilled at intercepting a moving train to handle problems like that. So I will put in the chat our contact info. We do have a text to tip, a direct phone line to our police dispatch, and a 287-I's number that gets us rolling pretty quick. But we do work closely with Salt Lake. If we're patrolling the area and we see something going on, we'll stop and handle it, call Salt Lake to have them come deal with it, and vice versa. They beat us to the homicide case the other night, so it kind of stabilized the scene before we got there. So, but we work collaboratively with them and try to solve these issues.
Okay, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I think that answers my questions, Amy.
I'm going to ask Shelley to unmute because she has a question that I personally had on Sunday morning when I had quite a few folks in the neighborhood texting me when Main Street was taped off to pedestrian and auto traffic, and folks didn't know, was it safe to leave their homes? Because, as Chief Brown noted, there'd been a shooting scene that covered multiple blocks. And I didn't have a good answer for them. And, the police I understand it was a holiday weekend and resources were probably stretched thin, and we'd already had a homicide the night before in the neighborhood. So that, again, resources were probably stretched thin, but that put me in a really weird place as a community advocate, just a volunteer, to try to give folks the right answer about, was it safe for them to exit their homes? I did not know. And I did not have a good person to ask, and we didn't get a public statement from the police until I think early that afternoon, and the shooting had happened at 5:25 a.m. So that's a long gap. How can we get faster information? But I would love for this weekend's events to be the last violent incidents that happen in Ballpark.
Amy,
But I'd love to be more realistic. Sorry, Shelley, I just scooped the question. Would you like to ask it yourself?
it's okay. So I just have had several times when, for a more recent example, where we're sitting outside, an officer pulls up, blocks off our little street on Van Buren, gets out, gets in the back of his trunk, gets out his rifle, does whatever he does to engage it. He's on his radio. Something's going on at the motel over here. And I'm like, I don't want to distract him. Excuse me. And he's like motioning, get in the house. This has happened more than once. And there's been times when we've looked out and there are officers in our backyard with their guns drawn. There have been times when they're just simply walking down the street and something's going on. And we would like to know, is there a way that in this neighborhood, is there a radio station like that the office, like how can we know? Like I know many years ago in the 80s, my uncle would listen to the police talking on their radios and they would know what was going on in the neighborhood. And I have grandkids and I live right on the corner of where a lot of activity is. And I would like to be proactive and say, hey, guess what? We need to go in the house. A lot of these crimes are of opportunity. And if you have somebody that's running from the police and you're sitting in your yard, you could be the next victim. Get in the house, I've got a gun, and then you're the next hostage. Like it's that bad in this neighborhood and we all know it.
Shelley, thank you for your comment. Some of the best information we put out is on Twitter. If you follow us on Twitter at Salt Lake City PD, there'll be real-time updates. On Sunday morning's event, we had PR on scene within.
I'm sorry, Chief Brown, that's not actually the case. I don't mean to be rude, but there are not real-time updates on Twitter. And again, maybe it's because their resources were stretched thin this weekend.
We had no, I was getting to that, Amy. We had PR on scene Sunday morning and they were giving direct reports and updates to the media. So this Sunday, we didn't engage the social media. We were talking directly with the media and engaging that and the updates to them. So, but please understand, a lot of times the scene that we had on Sunday morning, very chaotic, very confusing. Officers are trying to preserve evidence and to make sure that it's not, kicked or destroyed, that we have the witnesses and the security cameras, everything that we need. So you're right. A lot of times it takes several hours, if not half a day or a day, for us to get through that. So the tape does stay up, but I know the PR team does a fantastic job of updating through the media and through social media on Twitter. But you're right, this Sunday we were directly reporting to the media.
Thank you, Jason. Looks like those are reasonable suggestions in the app, pardon me, in the chat. Yeah, I've often heard of reverse 911 calls. Have those ever been sent out? Would that have been appropriate for our neighborhood? I don't know what threshold you need to.
Do they work on cell phones?
Amy, they would.
Yes, sir.
We have that capability, but those are for immediate public danger. Those reverse 911 notifications. Not used for a specific crime scene like this.
All right, I don't mean to have skipped any questions in the chat. And I know Jason was on earlier and asked some questions, but I think he may have left the call. Chief Brown, would you like to clarify, because I think there's been some confusion in the neighborhood, bike cops. Bike cops doesn't always necessarily mean cops on a bicycle. I know that might seem really obvious to all of you, but it's not to civilians. Could you talk about that just for a second? And do we actually, should we anticipate seeing cops return to bicycles?
Yes, and good question, Amy. We bike cops have cars just like every other cop. They also have bikes. In fact, the Liberty bike squad now has some e-bikes that they love and use quite a bit. But a lot of times with the work they do, and as many times as they take people to jail, they would have to go and put their bike away and get a car to take somebody to jail. So we anticipate seeing them more and more on bikes, but they're in cars as well.
That's helpful to hear, because I know lots of folks, when you say the bike squad is in the neighborhood, that there's a real cognitive dissonance for people who say, I have never seen a cop on a bike.
Yeah, no,
Does
that's
that make
a good
sense?
point. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's good to reestablish some credibility.
Yeah.
And it makes sense why it would be real difficult to arrest somebody on a bicycle. Hello, George.
Okay.
Lovely
Chief
to see you,
Brown,
George.
can we-
Haven't seen you for a few months now.
Yeah. Chief Brown, out of the 8 mobile cop cams the city just bought, can you assign permanently 3 of them to Ballpark? It's, if 1/3 of the crime is happening here, it really needs 3 mobile cop cams. You can rotate them at the areas that have high calls for service, like Wayne's Corner and the shelters and Jefferson Park. But we really need the mobile cop cams. And I remember you discussing crime at Wayne's Corner 7 years ago, and we're still having the same problem. So it needs more focus, definitely. So what can you do about the mobile cop cams being permanently assigned to Ballpark?
Good question, George, and thanks for bringing that up. We did ask for more cameras and we were granted the funding for those. We wanted to get 8 more. We have 6 of the mobile cameras and we want 8 more, but with everything supply and demand, they're on order. We don't have them yet. So what I'd like to have is, there are 7 council districts. I'd like to have at least 2 for every council district, and they can work with the DCLOs or the detective fellows and his peers and the businesses and the community, and to put those cameras where they're best served, where they best serve the community. So as soon as we get them, maybe we can talk about that, or Detective Fellows can talk about when they're there and how in communicating with Sam, we can get those cameras where they need to be in a strategy that helps reduce crime and make the ballpark safer.
All right, at least one community member direct messaged me a question that I think he's going to resend to the group. Or maybe I'll just ask him to unmute so he can re-ask his question. Hey,
Hey there,
Sash, how are
Amy.
you tonight? Oh,
Hey, it's actually Sierra. Sorry
it
about
is
that.
actually Sierra. Hey, Sierra, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? So my question is regarding the latest shooting. I read in the media that it was at a quote music venue. I'm just wondering, is this a repeat area that the police are aware of? And is there anything being done to discourage, large gatherings at, early morning hours? And also, it sounds maybe possibly gang related. Is there any insight on that, or maybe it's still under investigation?
Yes, Sierra, those are all good questions. Unfortunately, right now, we're in the early part of the investigation, so we can't put a lot of information out on that. But those things are the same questions you're asking are questions we have too, and we're looking into that right now.
Okay. It just, because it seems like those, quote unquote businesses have some responsibility as far as, to who they employ and who they're bringing into our neighborhood. So I hope that that's being looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good question.
Chief Brown, I'll let you handle that question in the chat if you want. Danielle, I don't know how many music venues you're showing up at 5 a.m. I bet you're just, if I know you, I suspect you're just flipping houses at 5 a.m. Getting after it.
Amy, I don't see the question in chat. Which one are you talking about?
I'll let her voice it herself.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, guys. I'm just curious, I read in the news too that it said music venue. I guess I'm just unfamiliar with there being a licensed music venue establishment in our neighborhood. Can you share if it's a house that was playing music or if it's an actual licensed business? I'm just curious what area to avoid.
Yeah, Danielle, good questions. Again, it's part of this investigation we're looking into, but holistically, as we talk about the issues and concerns, I think that's something we can address from zoning, from business licensing, from a police aspect. I think that we can all work holistically to identify those problem areas, those businesses, and work together to shut them down and move them along.
And if people are having issues with those in your neighborhood, let me know, because I know a lot. I can direct the questions, the issues, the problems to the right resources in the city to deal with those types of problems. So if you're having those problems, please reach out to me. I am your liaison. I am your community liaison detective. Reach out to me with anything you guys might have. If I can't specifically do something, I will find someone that can. So there's no problem too small or big that I can't help you with. Just reach out. And even if it's something that's like, oh no, they have a license or it's legal, then that's fine. But at least you know. So please reach out to me, because again, I am your liaison. I'm here to help you. I'm here to get those things squared away. And if it's not something that they're supposed to be doing, then it's something that I can take care of. So please reach out if you have those issues.
Hey, Sam, somebody asked about the glass on the sidewalk on Kensington. Will you look into that tomorrow to see if we can't contact somebody to get that cleaned up?
Yeah, we already have our, the city has already got the boarding, their boarding contractor to go, that's scheduled to get boarded up. So it should be done in the next, I want to say week, hopefully not anytime any later than that, but I will double check and make sure.
All right, I think we're about ready to wrap up, but Chief Brown, I guess my last set of questions for you is I'm concerned, and I think probably lots of us are concerned on this call that we're going to be here in another 3 or 6 months having these same conversations. And I know you can't guarantee that we won't be. I'm not sure how to even frame this as a question. Can we revisit these, goals as a neighborhood?
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy, or Amy, sorry. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely, Ballpark community, absolutely. If you'd like, be more than happy to come back in a month to talk about some of the progress we've made, to talk about some of the operations we've conducted. You're our partner in this, and so absolutely. I want to ensure those living, those working, those visiting the Ballpark community, that it remains a safe and welcoming community. I really do. And I hear your concerns today. I've taken notes. We'll make assignments, and more importantly, we'll follow up with you and let you know what we've done and what more we can do and where we're going.
Sorry, Councilmember Mana, I see that you just turned on your video. Would you like to, didn't mean to exclude you.
No, that's okay. I just apologies that I couldn't unmute earlier. I was doing double duty with a previous appointment that went long, but I was listening to this whole meeting. I was able to at least catch the conversation. And of course, I'm aware of the incidents that happened. And so I'm just, thank you for having the meeting and for making sure that we're all having this conversation. But I'm happy to answer questions if you want to know what City Council is doing, but I don't want to take up any space that isn't necessary. But I did put my contact information in the chat as well, so feel free to reach out.
Sorry, Dan Thomas. Oh, that's not a request for me. That's a request for Dan. Pardon me. Dan, would you like to articulate your question out loud? I'm not sure if Darren, I think Darren might be on his cell phone. Sometimes it can be hard to see a chat on a phone.
Yeah, sorry, no. It's been mentioned a few times tonight how persistent the issues with drugs, prostitution, vandalism are in the alleys over here. And so that is absolutely something that could come before City Council. So it seems appropriate to hear if Darren has a comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about alleyways a lot. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in alleyways, but I don't think every alleyway is productive, and obviously some are causing our spaces for crime to happen. And so I look at every alleyway vacation request individually, and I think they're all fact dependent. So if there was one where there was a lot of crime that's happening, of course that would weigh into the decision. One of the problems with most of the alleyways in the Ballpark neighborhood, though, is that they are Rocky Mountain Power right-of-ways, so it's a little tricky to vacate them. It's not impossible, but it does make it quite a bit more difficult. That's where most of our power lines run, and they need to be able to get their trucks back there to service those power lines. So again, though it's not impossible, it makes it a lot more tricky to do so. I'm not sure specifically on that one, but I do think the power lines run in the back as well.
And I mean, that's a valid point, Rocky Mountain Power, and it probably used to be a lot more important, or at least convenient, to do it that way. We also have neighborhoods where Rocky Mountain Power, if they need to service a power line, they simply just go into somebody's backyard to do so, or other means. Alleys aren't the only way to do it. Are you comfortable leading? I mean, to name the one that's been named tonight multiple times is the between Major Street and State Street. That is persistently a problem, has been for a very, very long time. Would you be able to lead us in the right direction on how to handle this? Perhaps bring it forward to be considered for vacation?
Sorry, I mute out of habit after I stop speaking, and I realize that's a bad idea on this call. I'm happy to talk with you, Dan, about the process for that and get you connected with the right people to make that request. There's a fairly technical process of like looking in it, and then there's a process of signature gathering and things like that. So yeah, if you want to, we can set up a meeting later and get you those resources. And
yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I think that Mark Lockhart and a few others should be part of that as well.
Certainly. Yeah, I'm happy to help you with that process. Again, I think with all decisions on alleyway, I think in general, and I've made this public before, so I don't mind saying it again. In general, I'm opposed to alley vacations when they're not necessary, but in this case, that alley might be necessary to vacate it. So absolutely willing to consider that and help you through the process if you want to. It's a kind of a community-led application usually. I think it has to be the adjacent property owners. Where that alleyway, I believe, has mostly commercial properties on it, the city sells the property to the adjacent property owners. So they have to get a certain percentage of those property owners interested in purchasing that. If it were adjacent to residential properties, then the city just gives that property. That's the current process. So it would require a certain number of those property owners being interested in purchasing.
Understood. And thank you for that. We will absolutely continue this with neighbors sharing this alley and report back to the Ballpark Community Council our progress on this. So thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dan.
Great. All right. Well, I'm about to wrap this up, but I did have I've got a few press folks who are communicating with me simultaneously during this call. I doubt that surprises everybody. And somebody asked me to clarify where the PIOs met with the press on Sunday and at what time. I don't know if anybody on the call can confirm that for me.
Amy?
Yes, sir.
Brent Weisberg is going to jump on right now and he'll clarify all that for us.
Oh, great.
Hey, Amy. So I was the public information officer who responded to that scene on Sunday. We had media who reached out to us very early on. The media came to the scene. We established a media staging location, and we passed that along to the media via our dispatch and our on-scene watch commander. And so as the media were calling in to dispatch to inquire about the incident, obviously they heard it over the police scanners. We met media there at Main Street and Andrews Avenue, and that's where the media staging was, and that's where we spoke to media.
Thank you, Brent. And I'm asking anybody if they have any follow-up questions on that. They're asking for a time.
You know, that day was that was a long morning for me, so I don't have the specific time. I'm happy to follow up with our media partners offline regarding this incident. They know that we are a very proactive public information group. We will use Twitter to advise in these situations, since this had media on scene so early, we just established that media staging. It is media. They will just come to the scene on certain calls, and that's what happened here. Is they showed up very early in this case.
All right, well, thank you for that clarification. If you could pass any of that on to me, I'd be happy to pass that on to the folks who are asking me those questions. And I'll throw my email in the chat, even though it might be incredibly well known at this point. All right. It would be wonderful. Oh, if this is the last kind of meeting like this that we have to have, not because I don't enjoy having ballpark community council meetings. I just love it when they can be more about the Kensington Avenue Street Festival than about issues like this. But I know they're very serious and they affect our quality of life a great deal. So thank you all for spending your time with us this evening. Oh, let's see. There are a few, I know there are a few more law enforcement officers on this call who I didn't call out. I appreciate the fact that they're on this call and that they continue to serve our neighborhood. Sergeant Alan Christensen, I love seeing your tall figure stride through our neighborhood. Lieutenant Steve Woolridge, love seeing you doing overtime with the bees every time you come through our neighborhood. It's a happy day for me. I know there are others on this call as well. Any last questions? Any more thank yous? And I know, and again, media on this call, thank you for doing the great job that you do to communicate our concerns back and forth, and doing the job of alerting the community when we're having an emergency like we did on several times within the past week. I appreciate it. Thank you for continuing to pay attention to our neighborhood. I know I said it 3 years ago, if there was an East Side neighborhood where there had been 4 murders that happened in less than a year, it'd be the front page of every paper all the time. We're not there anymore. This is starting to become normalized, and that's very dangerous for us. So I really appreciate that folks are still paying attention. They're still trying to make it not normal. That's very important for us. This is not normal. Please continue to treat it that way. I beg of you. Please continue to act like this is not okay and that Wayne's Corner is not okay. We will support you in that. We will do everything that we can as a community to support each other to make this not normal. We want a safe community for everybody who lives here and travels through and visits here. I cannot emphasize that enough. This is very serious. Please take this seriously. Thank you for your time this evening. Shelley, it's dependent on a rezone, and I don't know the answer to your question. It is up in the air.